Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good morning and welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Diehl. I'm currently the president of the Interreligious Council of Linn County. On this morning's show, we're going to be talking about casino gambling's impact on Iowa communities. And here to discuss this pretty relevant topic, I have three distinguished guests with me this morning. And so I'd like for each of you just to take a few seconds to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do and why this particular topic this morning is important.
Yes, Alan, thank you so much for having me. My name is Nikki Wilcox, and I am the Communications Director with the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. And here in the area, we serve over 1,200 member businesses through some core functions such as economic development, workforce, business support, public policy, and community events. So talking about casinos, especially in Iowa, that hits the economic development and the community portion. So the EA is very interested in this topic.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks for having me, Alan, and I'm glad to be joined by my two co-panelists here. My name is Sullivan. I'm an opinion columnist at the Gazette in Cedar Rapids, and I sometimes write about gambling in my columns, and I also like casinos. I like casinos because I think they're fun. I play poker, occasionally play slots. Several years ago, I worked for a few months in Las Vegas, and I just really like the atmosphere and things, so I'm firmly pro casino. So I'm excited to be here to chat about it.
Hi, I'm Ehrecke, President and CEO of the Iowa Gaming Association. We represent the 19 commercial casinos throughout the state, not the lottery, not the tribal casinos. And so we're the advocate for in the legislative arena with the regulatory aspect, public relations, and more, just about all the benefits and impact of what casinos have done for the state and will hopefully continue to do as premier entertainment destinations.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you all for joining this morning and look forward to this. So just to kind of set the table here, if you will, for our conversation, just a few things to help our listeners kind of orient themselves. As we're talking about here, of course, is the impact of casinos in Iowa. As Wes, as you stated, there are currently 19 state-regulated casinos in addition to 4 tribal casinos. Interestingly enough, prior to 1978, there were no casinos in the United States outside of Nevada. Today, there's over 1,000. So it definitely has gained in popularity to people like yourself, Adam. So now what's interesting as well is that each one of these casinos, if you will, have what's called a qualified sponsor organization that we'll get into as we discuss this. But this is a nonprofit group that is designed to specifically reinvest some of the revenue from these casinos back into their community. Now, what's done here is every few years, there is commissioned what's called the socioeconomic study and market analysis, which focuses on the casino gaming in Iowa. This is conducted by the Spectrum Gaming Group. I believe it's done about every 8 years. The last one was just conducted here back in December, actually, December 16th, 2021. This is over 180-page document that goes into really an analysis of the impact both socially and economically on our counties here in Iowa. So to get us started with the conversation, Wes, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that, why it's important, and what it sheds light on when it comes to casino gambling here in Iowa.
Well, maybe just a real quick perspective, going back 30 some years ago, you say way back, but there wasn't any casinos, but back in the late 80s, we're coming off the heels of a farm crisis, and the legislature was looking for ways that could be a catalyst for economic development, to generate tourism dollars, to create good jobs, and out of that, the riverboat gaming industry was born. It was passed, and then the first casinos in 1991. So 30 years later, fast forward to where we're at now, a lot of things have evolved and grown. We're no longer, most of them are not on the river anymore as far as having to cruise and the like. But because of that, the legislature wanted to look at what is the socio-economic impact of this. And so in 2004, they did request the first one be conducted and then do one every 8 years. The last two have been done by Spectrum Gaming, a very highly respected company in this space of looking at this. And they do a very in-depth analysis to really look as what this does, for a community. I like to almost look at it a little bit different way when we were required to have the referendum vote that was required by the legislature back in the early 90s, that the average of the referendums that were to take place in 2002 was passed by 74%, and then again in 2010 by an average of 78%. So a tremendous bipartisan support that looked beyond really some of the social concerns that really were a part of what the original intent of this was.
Yeah, and you're talking to a lot of people about this, or a few people leading up to this conversation, right? There was this idea that this is just a money grab, right? That this is all about greed and so on and so forth. But I think having read this and given the extent to which this goes, I think that's anything but. So Adam or Nikki, do you have any thoughts on kind of the importance of casinos in Iowa, the role that they play in, let's say, attracting people to our state, or some of the benefits you're thinking of at this time?
I would just double back really quick to what you mentioned at the beginning, which about the sponsorship organizations. And so I think a lot of people don't realize that in Iowa, casinos are associated with a nonprofit foundation, and they really pour a lot of money back into the communities they serve in. I used to work in the nonprofit sector for a suicide prevention organization that was doing work in Washington County, where Riverside Casino is, and we benefited from those grant dollars. So I think as we're going to get into in more detail, the economic benefits, I think, are difficult to tease out, both the positives and negatives for the economic and social impacts. I think it's hard to tease out, but the charitable giving that casinos do is extremely easy to identify. We have numbers for that, and it's really significant.
Yeah.
In addition to what Adam said with the charity organizations, especially now, just with COVID the past 2 years, charities live and breathe by their fundraisers, which are usually big events, and those have had to get canceled the past couple years. So charities are really hurting. So I think now more than ever, the casinos are a huge positive for charities here in Iowa to help get that money back into the organizations, as well as all the tax dollars that it provides, because, with the pay for roads, schools, everything. So a lot of Iowans, don't want to pay too high of taxes, or want to get their taxes raised. So casinos are a great way just to keep the taxes from going up for the people who live here in Iowa.
If I can just maybe dovetail on that a little bit more, when you speak of not only the qualified sponsoring organizations with each of the casinos and what they're doing primarily for their area, but for a little bit it spills over into some of the adjoining counties. But the legislature, with their vision, has created the Qualified Community County Foundation program for all of the 85 non-casino counties to receive gaming tax revenue, which in turn then gets provided out. So really, about every citizen is getting impacted in a positive way now in the last many years because of that charitable contributions, which is nearing about $100 million a year because of the casinos and their tie with a lot of these nonprofits. In fact, the economic impact we do a report every year for the Racing Gaming Commission, our regulator, that looks at 4 factors: the wages and benefits, the Buy Iowa First program, where we try to purchase as much as we can from Iowa-based companies, the charitables, and then also the taxes paid. And we're exceeding over $1 billion in annual economic impact to the state in this past year. And that's been going on for several years. So.
And that's kind of been a sticking point with when the state's talking about considering new casino licenses is counties without a casino are getting a bad deal, basically, because people leave their county to spend money and go gamble. As Wes said, there are efforts to spread some of that money around, but it's still a huge boon for a community. Washington County, like I mentioned before, is not a huge community, but they bring in a ton of revenue for that. And so I think that really plays into the discussion about expanding casinos in Iowa. Everyone always talks about if you go to Riverside or go to Waterloo to the casino and just look at the license plates when you walk around, it's, few of the people are actually from those home counties. It's people that are traveling within Iowa or within a multi-state region that are coming there to spend money. And so there's an argument that, other counties should be able to get in on that as well.
And I think one thing, that reason why the Economic Alliance is so forward is that building a casino can also spur other developments, especially if you kind of put it in a higher traffic area, not kind of off in a cornfield, but somewhere more centered to town, of just the other development that can happen around it. It can help increase the property value, bring new businesses to that area. So it's not just a casino, it's a casino and other places around it because they want to be near where the people are.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it's an interesting thing. So that the page or the Spectrum Gaming Group looks at it again from an economic and a social perspective. And just for our listeners, the way they really analyze this is they look at it from a non-metropolitan casino county, right, versus a metropolitan casino county. So a county with a large population center versus casino counties without it. And what's interesting is overall from 1990 through 2019, employment in the lodging and entertainment sector grew by 81% in these metropolitan area casino counties. Employment in these sectors grew by 65%. In non-metropolitan casino counties, employment grew by 232%. In comparison, in non-casino counties, lodging and entertainment sector employment increased by 32% over 3 decades. So non-metropolitan areas seem to be benefiting significantly more. Do you see this? We were recently talking about, some of our concern about some of these smaller communities here in Iowa and their overall, health and longevity. What role do you see casinos specifically playing in keeping some of our Iowa smaller communities alive and sustainable for the long term?
I don't think it's going to be a solution for a huge number of counties. I mean, as soon as, if you've got too many of these, it's not going to work out. But I think I certainly would like to see the state allow a few more casinos, whether they're rural or urban areas, if the market can support them. But in the industry, they talk a lot about cannibalization, so that, is a new casino bringing in new business, or are they just taking business from a neighboring casino? And so certainly for the places where they are, that's a huge boon. And I would like to see a few more of them, but it's not like every small town can just get a casino and everything's going to be great. There's even in a regional area, multi-state area, there's only so many customers.
I think too, you have the even though not every community can have one, and certainly you have to have that county referendum to do that, and several have had their referendums and they've failed, and then there's others that have passed and didn't get a license because of maybe one that's adjacent to it. But a lot of this is the regional impact of this from the standpoint of not every job or every employee comes from that respective county. They come from an area around there. So that benefits the Buy Iowa First program, where we try to purchase as much as we can from Iowa-based companies. That is more regional, even state wide. And so, that's really what the Racing Gaming Commission, the regulator, has determined, Adam, about what is the right criteria. But they're expecting these to have a tremendous investment, not just, have many amenities, not just a gaming, not just a casino floor, but hotels and restaurants and sometimes spas or bowling alleys, golf clubs, and things like that really add to that entertainment, not to mention some of the best ballroom meeting convention space for concerts and weddings and corporate meetings and the like. For those respective communities, which is not just necessarily for that community, but for that region as well.
I would say on that too, that's a great point, that the trend has been for these big full service, many amenities, like Wes mentions. And I would like to see the state explore, is there a possibility to do something different? So sports betting is legal now. Could there be a standalone sports book? Poker is kind of on its way out in Iowa casinos. Could you have a standalone card room? Could you have, more places with video slots and things like that? And so as we're talking about, if more communities want to get in on this, but the casinos don't want them to have another casino nearby, maybe that's a different way to do it. We could have, these standalone features with, limited gaming. And I think that would address the cannibalization, and it would also, like we're talking about, it would give more counties an opportunity to do this. And it maybe even allow for some specialization. The place that is running the best card tournaments, poker tournaments, doesn't necessarily have to be the same place that's holding concerts and, has a golf course or, whatever it is, however you could break them up. But I think we can be creative with this and move away from this model of, we're going to have a couple dozen big casinos spread throughout the state and they're all going to have everything.
That might be a point to consider. However, we do have the Racing Gaming Commission that really, it's what they expect as far as regulation. I think that's the key to whatever model you would want to do. They would need, a good, effective regulation to give the public the assurance that there's a high level of integrity with that. And so those are some of the things that would have to take a look, and not to mention, well, I guess I did mention, but not to ignore the idea of the tremendous investment by those casinos that are in place now, and to have something come in that wouldn't have to hardly invest anything with, to be able to compete nearby. So those are all things that could be looked at, and that's where we have a pretty effective regulating commissioners that come from throughout the state. They have strong business minds and to look at what might be a model for the future. But this is the model we have now, and try to make that successful and well regulated, so that it does give the public the assurance that there is a high level of integrity.
Excellent. So before we switch to kind of the social impact that people have concerns with our, Wes, maybe speak a little bit to, I know Nebraska just legalized some of their casino gambling, which that raises concerns over in Council Bluffs and that area, which is, has several significant casinos that have pulled from Nebraska over the years. From a overall health of Iowa casinos, how do you think is the best way to respond to that? Do you see that there's a concern there? Do you think it justifies additional casinos in Iowa, less? Well, how do you see that playing out?
Well, certainly the influx of new casinos in Nebraska is going to have a major impact, I would.
I think we lost you there, Wes, for a minute. So we'll hopefully he'll get back with us on that one. So I do want to go ahead and there we go, Wes, you're back.
Sorry about that.
So no worries, you can pick up right where you left off.
Well, I think that with Nebraska is going to have a huge impact, certainly on the western area casinos, and with that recent Spectrum report and market analysis indicated it could be more than 30%. And then depending what happens after the first year. So the competition with that is how do you tie back, to what is needed. And I think it's the investment that these casinos are going to have to look at within that specific area where they're competing directly across the river to determine what might make the best sense.
Nikki, do you have any thoughts on that as far as how here in Eastern Iowa, right? Do you see there being an impact of that?
Yeah, especially kind of addressing the cannibalization issue, is that was one that we didn't really think would be a huge issue because, it is 60 miles, to Waterloo and about 40, 50 to Riverside, that having it, specifically here, we'd say Cedar Rapids, would just get a different audience just with business travelers, just with some of the corporations we have here, some people who don't travel to Riverside or Waterloo to gamble. That would be kind of a whole new market, and that it is a free market. And I know that can't compare casinos to hospitals, but like North Liberty is just building a brand new hospital, which is 19 miles away from Unity Point and Mercy here in Cedar Rapids, and it's okay because that's needed. And obviously, a casino and hospitals, not apples to apples, but just kind of the same thing, that there's enough business for everybody and it's a free market. And just what it could do to urban cities like Cedar Rapids with economic impact, the taxes, the community, the development, and like Wes said, the investment of the casino and just all the other development that could happen around it. I mean, we just see a lot of pros with casinos.
Wes, in like 2 minutes, what's your strongest argument against there's the free market, right, versus kind of the regulatory model? What's your strongest argument that we can't let the invisible hand of the free market have its way with casinos in Iowa?
Well, I think that perhaps the members that are nearby that Nikki alluded to, they were expected by the commission to have, tremendous investment, $110 million or more, to put in not just a casino, but many of the things, the hotel, the dining, and the variety of things that go with that. And that is, you have to get a return on that investment. And if something was to come in nearby, does that cannibalize that to make that very difficult to do? Any business would have that same type of concern. And so that's been probably one of the primary focus of even the commission as they looked at where these should be put throughout the state. As I alluded to earlier, there was several referendums that some passed. They did not get a license in other areas. And then oftentimes it was because of what had happened with a casino that had been put in before. Had that particular county passed their referendum, not unlike, Cedar Rapids several years ago before the others, they might have gotten that. And so I think that's been part of the mentality of this as it's evolved up to this point.
Adam, I'm sure, go for it. Yep.
I would say Wes and I have, basic disagreement here that we're not going to sort out on this discussion. Mm-hmm. But I would just say, in every businesses make major investments all the time. I work at a newspaper. We invest in staff and facilities. And we don't have a veto card. If somebody wants to start a new newspaper in town, they can go do that. And that's the same for most industries. Gambling has a much different regulatory history than many other industries. And because it was so heavily restricted for so long, and it still is very heavily restricted, there's going to be a lot of protectionism in the industry. That's just a difference of philosophy. But I think the industry is even more cautious than they need to be. I think, if you could expand to new kinds of gaming, I think that would actually bring more interest into the existing casinos. Right now, I go to casinos and I'm almost always the youngest person there. This is really an old person's thing. For instance, if Iowa were to allow online gambling or online poker playing, I think that would rejuvenate interest in poker, and it would actually bring more people into the card rooms. And sports betting is another opportunity. People are going to bet online, but I think that eventually they're going to come into casinos. And so I think, again, we have a difference of opinion on this, but I would challenge the industry that, maybe we can do some innovations.
It's more about probably the opinion of our regulator, and like you say, the protectionism and how it evolved, and that's just 30 years of how things have come. And now, where might it go? And these are some of the things when you talk about like sports wagering and the mobile aspect of that and how popular that is for people coming from out of state. And quite frankly, we have about 65% of our business, our revenue comes from our borders and people out of state that come. So that's a tremendous tourism boost in itself. And where will that go and what should that look like? Some of your models probably aren't that far off, Adam, but just that's not what it's been up to this point.
All right, so we have this is great discussion. So we had I'd like to spend maybe the last few minutes talking a little bit about the social aspect, right? So one of the things that the Spectrum Gaming Group does in their analysis, it does go into great depth, right? Comparing these, again, casino counties versus non-casino counties and looking at everything from divorce rates to reports of child abuse, et cetera. A few things we found that counties with casinos had higher child abuse and neglect rates than the counties without casinos. They found that for the most part, this is quoting right from the analysis, arrest rates were higher in counties with casinos than counties without them. We found that for the most part, the average education level of those persons living in a community with a casino is where a casino is located was lower than a community which casino is not located. One other thing, our analysis showed that the casino counties had a much higher percentage, for the most part, of single parent families in the counties without it. So one of the things they emphasize, of course, is, correlation doesn't equal causation, right? They're just saying, here's the numbers as we see them. We don't know if it is because of the casino. It does seem as if that the counties without a major metropolitan area seem to take the biggest hit when it comes to some of these negative social consequences. So I'd like for anybody to jump in and say, how are we going about addressing these concerns? How concerned should we be? And I'll let anybody jump in on that.
I understand that as part of casinos' social spending, that those addiction treatment programs are are funded through that, and so that's one way to do it. I would just underscore what you said, Alan, that the correlation doesn't equal causation. There are a lot of confounding variables. There's a relatively small number of casinos, so I don't think we can draw too many conclusions from that. The other thing I would point to is every time I write about gambling, I get a couple emails from people who they have a family member who suffered from addiction to gambling, and I'm extremely sympathetic to that. But the common thread in those, and this is borne out by the research, is that those are often correlated with substance abuse, mental illness, life events. And so I don't really think that gambling is the problem in a lot of those situations. It's, these people are in crisis and they need some other solution that isn't just taking away gambling.
And I agree with what Adam said, especially now. Gambling has changed dramatically over the past 40 years, especially now. I think Adam mentioned again about sports gambling. I mean, you can't, just walking downtown, it's splattered all over, buses of, sports gambling. You can get apps on your phone and things like that. So, yeah, I don't think the casinos are the cause of these problems. Because if people want to gamble, everyone has a smartphone these days. They're going to download an app on their phone and gamble.
The one proactive thing that we do, and I think those both of you articulated very well, that people that are unfortunately prone to compulsive behavior, is maybe not necessarily because of gaming, but if it is, we do have the 800 Bets Off program and work with the Your Life Iowa on ways to really heighten prevention, awareness, and treatment, and that's been ongoing. But the percentage has still been remaining about 1% to 2% of people that are experiencing compulsive behavior. Now, people may be prone to more higher percentages, but really it's been pretty successful, and I think that's the efforts by the casinos to put on every single ad. Have a problem, gambling problem, bet 800 bets off, or bet with your head not over it. A lot of those messages to try to really encourage people to do this and gamble responsibly.
All right, so we just have about a minute and a half left. I'd like for each of you maybe just to kind of give your overall feelings about the future of casino gambling in Iowa, the health of it, its kind of overall impact on attracting people to our state. We've obviously have a population concern here over the last several decades. We need things to do here in Iowa, and that's not just gambling, but a lot of things, right? So maybe just your 30-second synopsis, some closing thoughts on how you see casino gambling being a part of that over the next several decades.
I'd like to think that it's going to be continue to still be robust. We're going to have some headwinds with competition, certainly from Nebraska, and there's always going to be new technology and things evolve to give the customers what they want. But certainly these are premier entertainment destinations. We've been around for about 3 decades, and I think it's going to continue to flourish for several more to come.
My quick 2 cents is the bonuses they're giving away for signing up on the sports bet sites are just outrageous, and you're a dummy if you don't take advantage of them. And I'm not a paid advertiser or anything. That's just the facts.
All right.
And then, ours would be the economic impact. I know we said it before, but just all the money that goes to those charities and all the tax money that goes to the city and the state. I mean, that's just huge.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for the riveting conversation. Hopefully our listeners learned something today. Again, if you're interested, I would encourage you to go out and you can just Google for that Spectrum Gaming Group socioeconomic study here in Iowa. Read it for yourself. Very interesting reading. But again, thank you for tuning in this morning, and I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care now. Bye.
Thank you.